I've been building things my whole life. Not the kind of building that gets you on magazine covers or earns you a corner office with your name on a frosted glass door. The kind of building that starts at 4 a.m. with flour on your hands and ends at midnight counting receipts under a single bulb. The quiet kind. The kind that only makes sense to people who've ever watched someone they love pour everything they had into something the world hadn't asked for yet. My name is Ethan Cole. I own 3 coffee shops. I have a daughter named Emma who draws horses on every surface she can find and laughs like her grandmother. I had a wife named Jane. And last Tuesday I found a gold-embossed envelope on my kitchen counter with 60 names printed inside it, and mine wasn't one of them. But his was. Michael Henderson. Family table. Seat 3. I want you to understand what that sentence did to me because it didn't hit me the way you'd expect. It didn't make me angry. It made me go very, very still. The kind of still that happens when your body understands something before your mind is ready to. I set that envelope down the way you set down something sharp, carefully, deliberately, without making a sound. Jane was upstairs getting ready for work. Emma was still asleep. The house smelled like the coffee I'd already made, the same blend I'd been perfecting since I was 22 years old, and everything looked exactly like a Tuesday morning was supposed to look. I took a photo of the guest list with my phone. I slid the envelope back exactly where I'd found it. I walked out to my car, sat in the driveway and called my accountant. Anthony, I need you to run something for me. And I need you not to ask me why yet. Anthony Wilson has known me for 6 years. We met at a Chamber of Commerce mixer where neither of us wanted to be. He was there because his firm made him show up to 2 networking events a month, and I was there because my second location had just opened and I was trying to convince myself I was the kind of businessman who attended Chamber of Commerce mixers. We ended up standing at the same corner of the room, both holding drinks we weren't finishing, and he said, "You look like a man who'd rather be somewhere smaller." I told him I'd rather be in my kitchen. He said, "Good. I'd rather be doing your books." We've been friends ever since. Anthony spent 11 years at the IRS doing forensic accounting before a restructuring pushed him out. He has a gift that I've never been able to fully describe to people who don't understand numbers. He can look at a spreadsheet the way a doctor looks at an X-ray, pressing gently on the columns until he finds where something is broken. He told me once that financial deception always leaves the same kind of trace. It's never the big number that gives it away, he said. It's the small one that doesn't belong. 3 months before I found that envelope, Anthony had flagged a $12,000 withdrawal from our joint savings account marked Marketing Consulting. He'd sent me an email about it with a single question mark in the subject line. I had called Jane. She'd explained it was a vendor she was testing for her department, someone her company might bring on. I had forwarded Anthony her explanation. He had replied, "Okay. Thanks." He had not stopped watching. I know that now. I didn't know it then. He called me back 41 hours after I asked him to look. I was driving to my second location, the one on Mercer Street, when my phone lit up with his name. His first words were not hello. "Ethan. Find somewhere to pull over before I keep talking." I pulled into a parking garage 2 blocks from the shop. Level 2. The engine running. The kind of silence that exists inside a concrete structure in the middle of a city, hollow and close at the same time. "I've got 11 withdrawals," Anthony said, and his voice had the particular flatness it gets when he is being careful with me. 18 months. Total is $131,400. Every single one is marked Marketing Consulting. Every single one went to the same LLC, Henderson Global Market. I didn't say anything. I watched a pigeon walk across the concrete in front of my car like it had somewhere important to be. "That's Mike Henderson's company," I said. "Yes," Anthony said. "But Ethan, that's not the part one needs you to hear. Someone logged into your business accounting software 14 months ago from an IP address registered to an office building downtown. That building is leased to Momentum Brand Company." Pause. "Mike Henderson's other company. Ethan, they've been inside your books. Your pricing. Your corporate client list. Your contract renewal dates. All of it. I've thought about that moment many times since. What I remember most is not the anger. The anger came later, slow and clean like a tide coming in. What I remember is a particular memory that arrived without warning. My mother, standing at a bus stop in Cleveland at 5:30 in the morning, pouring coffee from a thermos into paper cups, smiling at strangers who needed something warm before the day started. She built that from nothing. She taught me everything I know about building something from nothing. And somewhere in the back of my mind, in the parking garage on level 2, I understood that someone had walked into the thing I'd built from her memory and helped themselves. "How long has he been taking our contracts?" I asked. "At least 8 months," Anthony said. Maybe longer. Ethan, I need to ask you something and I need you to answer me straight. Did you ever sign a withdrawal authorization form for this account in the last 18 months? No, I said. The silence that followed that answer was the longest 3 seconds of my life. Then we have a bigger problem, Anthony said quietly. Because your name is on every single one. I want to tell you that I drove straight to a lawyer's office. I want to tell you that I called Jane from the parking garage and confronted her right there, that I said everything that needed saying while the pigeon was still walking its indifferent circles on the concrete in front of my car. That would have been the satisfying version of this story. That's not what happened. What happened is that I drove to Mercer Street, opened the shop, pulled 3 double espressos for the morning regulars, restocked the pastry case, and spent 6 hours being exactly who I am every single Thursday. Because Anthony had told me one more thing before he hung up, something Amelia Sinclair would later confirm with the kind of calm authority that makes you understand why certain people become attorneys. He said, "Don't let her know you know." Not yet. The moment she knows you know, things start disappearing. So I went home. Jane was on the couch when I walked in, laptop open, presentation slides filling the screen, final preparations for the celebration. She'd cooked pasta, my Thursday recipe, the one my mother taught me. The apartment smelled like garlic and butter and the particular warmth of a home that looks, from the outside, completely intact. Emma was at the kitchen table doing homework, her pencil moving in the slow, deliberate way she has when she's thinking harder than the problem requires. "How was your day?" Jane asked without looking up from her screen. "Good," I said. "Busy. You know how Thursdays are." I sat down next to Emma and looked at her worksheet. Long division. I helped her through 2 problems. My hands were completely steady. I've gone back to that detail many times since, the steadiness of my hands, and I think it tells you something about what happens to a person when grief and clarity arrive at the exact same moment. They cancel each other's trembling out. Jane's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She reached for it faster than she needed to, not dramatically, not in any way that would have registered if I hadn't already been cataloging everything, and she read the message with her body turned slightly away from the room. A small angle. Maybe 15 degrees. The kind of thing you don't notice until you're already noticing everything. Emma glanced at her mother. Then she glanced at me. "I need you to understand something about my daughter before I tell you what she did next." Emma was 9 years old and she had inherited 2 things from me: my eyes and my habit of sitting quietly in rooms and absorbing what the adults around me thought I was too young to catch. She had been doing it her whole life. I'd always found it endearing. I found out later how much it had cost her to carry what she'd absorbed in silence. She slid her homework worksheet across the table toward me, pointed to a long division problem that she'd already solved correctly, and in the margin, circled lightly in pencil, small enough that Jane couldn't have seen it from the couch, she had written 6 words. "Is everything okay, Dad?" I looked at it for 1 second. I picked up her pencil. I wrote back in the same small, careful hand. "Yeah, baby. I'm good." I slid it back to her. She read it. She erased both our notes. She went back to her worksheet like nothing had happened, and I watched her erase us and felt something shift in my chest, some understanding of what she had been quietly protecting me from, and for how long, that I wasn't ready to look at directly yet. I helped Jane clear the dinner table. I asked about the celebration logistics. She told me about the venue, rooftop, 60 guests, her company's events team handling everything. She was animated, bright, genuinely excited in the way she gets about professional milestones, and I listened to every word and filed every detail and said, "That sounds incredible, Jane. You've earned it." And I meant it. That's the part of this story that I think people don't expect. Even then, standing in my kitchen, knowing what I knew, I meant it. She had worked hard for that promotion. That part was real. It was sitting next to the fraud like a photograph next to a forged signature. Close enough to be confusing, too different to be the same thing. I went to bed at 10:30. Jane stayed up working. I lay in the dark and thought about my mother's handwritten note, which I keep in the top drawer of my desk at the 3rd location. Find the thing people can't start their day without, then be that thing. I had built 3 of them. Someone had been inside all 3 of them for 14 months, wearing my signature like a costume. I did not sleep. At 5:47 a.m. I got up, went to the kitchen and made 5 phone calls before Jane came downstairs. Amelia Sinclair's office is on the 14th floor of a building on Michigan Avenue where everything is deliberately understated. The furniture, the lighting, the way her assistant offers you water without asking what kind. Amelia herself is the same way. She is precise and unhurried and has the particular quality of someone who has seen every version of human desperation and decided long ago not to be surprised by any of it. I sat across from her with Anthony's printed bank statements, the photo of the guest list, and the IP access logs from my accounting software. She read everything without speaking. 4 minutes. I counted them. She set the papers down, straightened them into a neat stack, and said 3 words with the same tone you'd use to read a street sign. This is wire fraud. Then she picked up the withdrawal authorization forms and held one toward me. Is this your signature? I looked at it for the first time. My name 11 times on 11 forms authorizing 11 transfers to Henderson Global Market. I had never seen a single one of these forms before that moment. That's not my handwriting, I said. She nodded once. Then we add identity theft and forgery. She set the form down. Mr. Cole, I've handled 11 cases that look exactly like this. The structure is identical every time. A romantic relationship used as financial cover, proprietary business information extracted through shared access, a third party absorbing the stolen intelligence into a competing operation. She paused. The woman in Denver filed too late. You are not going to file too late. I went still. Denver? She slid a printed page across the desk, a public records document Anthony had pulled but hadn't yet shown me. A woman named Carla Reyes. Denver, Colorado. $87,000. Mike Henderson's dissolved LLC. A police report that went cold because the transfers had been structured through a shell company. He had done this before. Jane wasn't his first. Does your wife know what you know? Amelia asked. No, I said. She almost smiled. Good. Let's keep it that way until tonight. The morning of Jane's promotion celebration, I was sitting at the kitchen table at 5:47 a.m. with a cup of Cole's Blend, my mother's recipe, dark and clean, and a list of 5 names written on the back of a receipt from my Mercer Street location. Jane was asleep. Emma was asleep. The house was the quietest it had been in weeks, and I sat inside that quiet and made every call I needed to make before it ended. Anthony first. Transfer my half of every joint account into the business account. Remove my name from all shared authorizations. Do it before noon. He said he'd already had the paperwork ready. He'd been ready since the parking garage. Amelia second. File the separation papers today. I want her served within 72 hours. She said it was already drafted. She'd been waiting for my word. My bank's fraud division third. I reported the forged signatures. They opened an investigation and froze the joint accounts pending review. The woman on the phone had the careful neutrality of someone trained not to react, and I appreciated it more than I could explain. My corporate accounts manager fourth. I contacted the 3 clients Mike had absorbed using my pricing data and scheduled calls with each of them for the following week. I didn't tell them everything yet. I told them enough. My contractor fifth. The 4th Cole's Blend location, a River North space I'd been sitting on for 2 months, was going forward. Start the build-out Monday, I said. We're moving. I heard Jane's alarm go off upstairs at 6:30. I heard her shower. I went upstairs, put on my best suit, and came back to the kitchen to find her in her robe pouring coffee, radiant and completely unaware of the 5 conversations I had just had about her life. You look incredible, I told her. I meant it. That made it worse. I left the house 20 minutes before she did. And before I walked out the door, I stood at the kitchen counter, looked at my wedding ring for a long moment, and set it down next to the coffee maker. She would find it an hour later when she came back downstairs. I know because Emma told me. She said Jane picked it up and held it in her palm for a long time without moving, like she was trying to remember the weight of it. The venue was a rooftop in River North, the kind of space that costs what it looks like it costs. Warm Edison lighting strung above 60 guests, an open bar, the city laid out below like something arranged to impress. Jane's company had done it properly. I'll give them that. I checked in at the door using Jane's name. The event coordinator hesitated for exactly 1 second, then let me through. I got a drink from the bar. I found a position near the far railing with clean sight lines to the family table and I watched. Gerald Hargrove, Jane's father, the retired corporate attorney who had shaken my hand exactly twice in 6 years with the minimal pressure of a man fulfilling a social obligation, was leaning toward Mike Henderson with the warm, two-handed grip he had never once used with me. Diane, Jane's mother, was laughing at something Mike had said, her hand touching his forearm in the easy way she touched the arms of people she'd already decided belonged in her world. They looked like a family photograph from an alternate timeline. The timeline where Jane had made a different choice 7 years ago, the choice her parents had always quietly preferred. I had met Mike Henderson exactly once at a company event 2 years ago. He had shaken my hand and said, "Jane talks about Cole's Blend all the time, with a smile that I had taken as friendly. I understood that smile differently now. Then Jane walked in. She was stunning. VP of Sales, confident, in a dress I'd never seen, moving through the room the way she moves when she knows everyone is watching and has decided to deserve it. Mike stood up. Gerald began making introductions. And then Jane's eyes found me across the rooftop, and every piece of her composure locked into place simultaneously. Smile frozen, glass frozen, body frozen, the way a person freezes when the thing they were most afraid of walks through a door they were certain they'd locked. I raised my glass slightly. A small, quiet acknowledgement across 60 people who had no idea what they were watching. My phone buzzed. Anthony, done. All transferred. You're clear. I stayed 22 minutes. Long enough for everyone at the family table to register that I had been there. Then I walked out without speaking to Jane once. Anthony's apartment is the kind of place that tells you everything about the man who lives in it: clean, functional, a bookshelf organized by subject, a kitchen that gets used. He made food that neither of us ate. The TV was on. I was sitting on his couch with my phone face down on the cushion beside me, not because I was afraid Jane would call, she had already called 4 times, but because I wasn't ready to be in the world yet. I needed 1 hour inside 4 walls where nothing was required of me. At 9:43 p.m., Emma called. Dad, are you okay? Mom came home and went straight to her room, and I heard her crying. I'm okay, baby. Are you okay? A pause that lasted long enough for me to understand she was choosing her words the way a 9-year-old chooses words when she knows the answer is complicated. Dad, I think I knew something. I closed my eyes. She told me about the phone call she'd overheard 2 months ago, Jane's voice low and fast in the kitchen. He doesn't check the accounts, Mike. He never checks. She told me about her grandmother's comment at breakfast. Mike is going to be at Mommy's big party. He's very important to what Mommy is doing. She told me about the margin note she had almost written 100 times and erased every time because she didn't know if she was allowed to know what she knew. I should have told you, she said, her voice fracturing along the edges. Emma, listen to me carefully. This is not your job. None of this is your job. You're 9 years old. Your only job is to be 9. Do you understand me? Are you coming home? Not tonight. But I will see you tomorrow. I promise. After I hung up, Anthony said quietly, she was protecting you the only way she knew how. I didn't answer. I opened my laptop and read Carla Reyes's name in the public records search for the first time. Denver. $87,000. Dissolved LLC. Reincorporated. New city. New woman. Same pattern. Mike Henderson didn't love Jane. Jane was the business model. 3 days after the party, I was behind the counter at my Mercer Street location during the 8 a.m. rush. The hour when the shop is exactly what my mother imagined it could be, every stool filled, the espresso machine running clean, the smell of the dark roast hitting you at the door like a handshake. My barista Chloe, who has worked for me since location 2 opened and has the particular loyalty of someone who takes your success personally, set a quart due on the counter in front of me and said, "Hey, I saw something online and I didn't know if I should say anything." She handed me her phone. Jane's company's official social media page. A professional photographer. Jane at the head of the family table, newly promoted, her parents flanking her on one side, and Mike Henderson on the other, his arm resting on the back of her chair with the comfortable ownership of a man who believes he belongs there permanently. The caption, celebrating our newest VP with the people who matter most. 412 likes. Congratulations filling the comments. 3 texts from people who knew me personally, the awkward, "Hey man, just wanted to check on you" kind, sitting unopened in my notifications. I looked at the photograph for a long time. I looked at the chair. Family table, seat 3. The seat with my name not on the invitation. The seat where Mike Henderson's arm rested on the back of my wife's chair in a photograph her company posted publicly for the industry to see. I screenshotted it. Emailed it to Amelia with one line, "For the record." Then I handed Chloe back her phone and pulled the next order. I also heard, Chloe said carefully, that Momentum Brand lost the Fairview corporate campus account this week. I looked up. Wasn't that one of yours before they took it? I felt something loosen in my chest, not quite relief, not quite satisfaction. Something older than both. Yeah, I said. I made a few calls. She called 23 times across 4 days. I let everyone go to voicemail on Amelia's instruction, not cruelty, strategy. Every unanswered call was Jane building a record of her own desperation. Every voicemail was documentation. Amelia had told me, let her talk into the machine. Desperate people tell the truth when they think they're leaving a message for someone who loves them. On call 24 I picked up. I was sitting in the back office of my third location, door closed, recording application already open on my laptop. Amelia had walked me through it twice. Jane's voice was unrecognizable. The corporate composure, the voice she uses in board presentations, the voice that got her to VP, was completely gone. She sounded like the woman I'd married in a garden in September 6 years ago, which was the most disorienting thing she could have possibly sounded like. Ethan, please, just let me explain. I'm listening, I said. She gave me the rehearsed version. The money was a business investment she'd been managing independently. Mike's company had offered a partnership opportunity she believed in. She was going to tell me. She'd been waiting for the right moment. The promotion was going to change everything, and she needed me to understand that she had done this for their future, for Emma's future, for the life she wanted them to build together. I waited until she finished. Then, Jane. Anthony has the bank records. Amelia has the forged signature documents. The fraud division has opened a formal investigation and frozen the accounts. The IP logs from my accounting software are in Amelia's possession. I paused. And I have Carla Reyes's police report from Denver, where Mike did the exact same thing to a woman named Carla before he ever met you. Silence so complete I could hear her breathing. Did you know about Denver? I asked. She didn't answer. That silence was its own answer, the kind that doesn't need words because the shape of it says everything. I'm filing a police report Monday morning, I said. Amelia will be in touch. I hung up. The recording uploaded automatically to the shared folder. I sat in my back office for 3 minutes, then went back out to the floor because the 2 p.m. rush was starting and my people needed me present. That's the thing about building something real. It keeps asking you to show up even when showing up is the hardest thing you've ever done. And you do it. Because your mother showed you how. Amelia filed on a Monday. Civil suit against Jane for wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and tortious interference with business relations. Criminal complaint against both Jane and Mike with the Financial Crimes Unit, delivered simultaneously so neither could warn the other before detectives made contact. The detective assigned was Sandra Okafor, 9 years in financial crimes, the kind of professional who makes you feel like your case is the only one on her desk even though you know it isn't. She pulled Mike's file within the first hour and found Carla Reyes's cold case from Denver before lunch. She called the Denver detective. By end of day, Mike Henderson had 2 jurisdictions and 2 detectives comparing notes on his methodology. Amelia called me that evening and said, "He's going to feel this one." The corporate clients moved that same week. 2 of the 3 I'd quietly recontacted returned to Kohl's Blend contracts within 48 hours. One of them sent a signed agreement before I'd even followed up, with a note from their procurement director that said simply, "We should have stayed." The third sent an email stating they had not been aware the pricing data used in Momentum Brand's pitch had been obtained improperly and were reviewing their relationship accordingly. I forwarded that email to Amelia. She forwarded it to Sandra Okafor. Sandra Okafor forwarded it to the DA's office. The thread that Carla Reyes had started in Denver 4 years ago, the one that went cold because Mike had been careful enough and fast enough to disappear before it finished, was finally being pulled from the other end. Then Amelia called with news I hadn't expected this quickly. Mike's attorney contacted me this morning. He wants to discuss a possible resolution. He's offering 60% restitution of the $131,400. What happens if we decline? I asked. Criminal trial. Public record. Potentially full restitution plus damages, but it's longer and harder. 3 seconds. Counter with full restitution plus attorney's fees. If he declines, we go to trial and I want Carla Reyes's case referenced in every filing. That's what I thought you'd say, Amelia said. I could hear her already typing. It took 6 weeks. Jane's attorney negotiated carefully, then less carefully, then with the quiet urgency of someone who has seen the evidence pile and done the math. The DA's office was not inclined toward generosity, not with forged signatures, not with a 14-month unauthorized access to a private business system, not with a parallel case in Denver establishing a pattern that made Jane's involvement look less like a mistake and more like a choice made with full knowledge of who Mike Henderson was and what he did to people. Jane accepted a plea deal on a Wednesday morning in November. Full restitution of the $131,400. A formal fraud conviction on her permanent record. 2 years of supervised probation. Her company had already moved. The VP position was quietly eliminated from the org chart the week the charges became public, in the particular corporate way that means everyone knows exactly what happened and no one will say it plainly. Mike Henderson negotiated separately, facing charges in Illinois and Colorado simultaneously. He accepted a deal that included full restitution across both cases, a substantial fine, and 18 months in a minimum security facility outside Chicago. Momentum Brand Company was dissolved. The LLC behind Henderson Global Market was dissolved. Carla Reyes, who Amelia had contacted as a courtesy, sent me a handwritten note that said, "Thank you for finishing it." I read that note 3 times. The divorce finalized in the same week as the plea. Primary custody of Emma. The house, which I sold immediately because I didn't want the house, I wanted the version of the house that no longer existed. A full financial accounting of joint assets and a recovery of the majority of the stolen funds once Mike's restitution payments began processing. Outside the courthouse, in October light that had the particular gold of late afternoon in Chicago, I was walking to my car when Jane called my name from the steps. I turned. She looked at me the way people look at something they have permanently and irreversibly lost, with the full understanding that they are the reason it's gone. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about my mother's thermos. I thought about Emma's penciled note in the margin of a long division worksheet. I thought about 11 forged signatures wearing my name. "Take care of yourself, Jane," I said. I turned and walked to where Emma was waiting by the car. She had asked to come and she was old enough and I had said yes, and she took my hand without saying anything and we drove away and I did not look in the rearview mirror once. 6 weeks later, the 4th Coles Blend location was under construction in River North. The space smelled like fresh drywall and cut wood and the specific kind of possibility that only exists inside a building that hasn't become anything yet. I had a final contract signing with the commercial leasing agent that morning. Paperwork, signatures, the last administrative step before the build-out moved into its final phase. The leasing agent was Morgan Mitchell. She was efficient in the way people are efficient when they're genuinely good at something rather than performing competence. Answered questions before I finished asking them, moved through the contract with the focused ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times and still took it seriously every time. I signed where I was supposed to sign. She countersigned. Professional, clean, unremarkable. Then I looked up and saw the note above her desk. Frame. Small. 6 words in clean block lettering. Build it so good they can't ignore it. I stood in front of it for 3 seconds longer than was professionally appropriate. Maybe 4. "Where's that from?" I asked. She looked up from the contract. "My dad. He was a contractor. Built houses his whole life, never ran a single advertisement. Just built them so well that people told other people." Pause. "You know the type?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I know exactly the type." She slid the contract copy across the desk. We shook hands, firm, direct, brief. She said, "Congratulations on the new location. Coles Blend, right? My office gets delivery from your River West shop every Monday morning." "I built that route myself," I said. She held the handshake 1 beat longer than the transaction required. Then she let go and went back to her files, and I walked out into the River North afternoon carrying the signed contract and something lighter than I'd carried in a long time. I stood outside the construction site and looked through the plastic-sheeted windows at the bones of my 4th location. The raw framing, the exposed ceiling, the concrete floor that would eventually hold the counter my mother's recipe would be served from every morning to people who needed something warm before their day started. I pulled out my phone. Opened a photo I'd kept without knowing exactly why. The kitchen counter, my wedding ring sitting next to the coffee maker in the early morning light of a morning that had changed everything. I looked at it for a moment. Then I closed it. My mother left me $11,000 and a note that told me to find the thing people can't start their day without. I built 4 of them. I lost a marriage I thought was mine. I found out a man I'd never met had been walking through everything I built like he owned it. I found out the woman I loved had handed him the key. And I did the only thing I know how to do. I kept building. Because the thing about coffee is, no matter what happened yesterday, people need it again in the morning. And I will be there. Coles Blend. Location 4. Opens in spring.